We are staff of the Agri-Communications Unit, and it has come to our notice that a disease outbreak in the livestock sector has just occurred. And here we are now in the office of the Director General of the Department of Livestock, Dr. Abdul Sise, who doubles as the Chief Vet Officer in the Gambia. We would like him to enlighten us and the farming community in general on the unforeseen outbreak. Dr. Sise, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you give us an enlightenment on what is the foot and mouth disease?
Thank you, Madam, and welcome to the Department of Livestock Services. As everybody knows now, there is a disease in animals that is affecting cattle specifically. We have now confirmed that this disease is FMD, that is foot and mouth disease. We first got reports about suspected outbreak of a disease in cattle in Ndawen and Jala in the Central River Region North, where our regional livestock director received message from farmers that they are seeing unusually strange signs in their cattle population in those areas. So our team at the Regional Livestock Directorate in CRR North immediately went to the site to get more information on the issue. They suspected that foot and mouth disease was circulating in their cattle in that area. Immediate reports were sent to the headquarters of the Department of Livestock Services at Abuko, and we also immediately sent a team of investigators to go to the site and do a thorough investigation to be able to gather more information about the situation. They also suspected that it was foot and mouth disease virus that was circulating in those animals. Samples were immediately collected. As we are not capacitized, our lab here, the veterinary lab in this country, doesn't have the capacity to diagnose this disease. We sent the samples to Dakar, the national lab called LENARV, Laboratoire National de Recherche Vétérinaire.
I am Mr. Borijabo, the laboratory manager of the Central Veterinary Laboratory of the Department of Livestock Services of the Ministry of Agriculture. The Central Veterinary Lab is actually responsible for all laboratory tests of animals. We are basically a disease diagnostic laboratory which actually looks into the disease condition of animals. An example I'll give you is when, for example, there's an outbreak in the field, a report will be sent to the headquarters or to the Deputy Director General responsible for animal health, who in turn will alert the laboratory and the epidemiology unit, which will form teams and go to the field to go and investigate that outbreak. The most recent one that I have in memory is the foot and mouth outbreak, which actually was reported by the joint operations committee. It's called JOC of the disaster management agency. They alerted us to a disease incursion, which at that time they said was in Senegal, but fast approaching the Gambia. Now we alerted our field officers, who also alerted their agents, who were mostly at the border areas, because the report was that it was fast approaching Gambia and it was in the Matam area. Now, getting those information, our field surveillance officers were very much on the alert, and that the first report came from CRR North of disease in animals, which actually was quite devastating, causing lameness and mouth sores. And this resulted in the deaths of certain animals. This warranted the directorate to form a team, an investigation team, which went to the field to investigate the outbreak. And it turned out to be a foot and mouth disease. But the Central Veterinary Lab, as you can see, is in a deplorable condition. We urgently need a lot of assistance to get most of the units functional. We have received support not so long ago, and I think we should be proud to say that this last renovation was actually funded by the government of the Gambia, you know, from the GLF funds, and that is the room that we are giving this interview. You can see the wall, the ceiling, the floors are all sparkling, and you know, there is air conditioning. You can see the biosafety hood. Everything is in order. We intend to carry out rabies diagnosis in these 2 rooms here. If we have the help that we are requesting for, we'll be able to renovate more rooms and more units so that we can have the capacity to diagnose foot and mouth, lumpy skin disease, as well as PPR, which are very important diseases of economic importance, of course, to the Gambian farmer. I want to thank you very much, CIS, for giving us this opportunity to showcase our constraints, and we hope it will fall on very good ears, which will actually respond to our request or our call for assistance.
We were supported through the intervention of the Department of Veterinary Services of Senegal. So it took us almost 1 week before we could get the results. When the results came, it was confirmed that the FMD we suspected was real disease that was being seen in that area of the country. Since then, we started to implement some, measures, at least to cope the situation. But then, going back to what you just asked, it would be good for people to have a better understanding of what actually FMD is. Foot and mouth disease is a disease that affects cattle, sheep and goats, and also pigs. Yes, it's also common in wild animals. I mean, a good number of species of wildlife are also affected by foot and mouth disease. I mean, but mostly it's more prominent or more severe in our cattle and pigs. The disease manifests itself in the form of lesions, blisters per se, that eventually turn into lesions. And these lesions are normally seen in the mouth area, that is inside the mouth, the tongue, the gums, and so on. I mean, these blisters will eventually burst to form lesions which are very severe, produce a lot of pain to the animal, and eventually these animals, will be reluctant to eat. They would not eat, because there's a lot of pain in their mouths, and also you can also find some lesions, some of these lesions, blisters that eventually burst in the feet area, and hence the name foot and mouth disease. Basically, this is where you find some of these lesions that I just said. That would prevent the animal from moving. It will be reluctant to move, and if the animal cannot move, it will be very hard for the animal to get feed and so on, because most of these animals are, with the production system that is being practiced in the Gambia, they depend on grazing. They have to move from one area to the other for grazing. So this affects them eventually. You see that the outcome of all this is, the animal losing weight, and of course, if it has been producing milk, the production will also drastically go down. So these are some of the effects of FMD in our animals. Well, it is more apparent in cattle than in sheep and goats. So basically, the outbreak was first suspected around the end of July. Yeah. So with FMD, it's a bit different from CBPP. When it comes to your question of whether it has been here in the past few years or it has been absent for so long, which is the case for CBPP. For FMD, we say it is endemic in this country. What we mean by that, we know it is present in the country, and from time to time it appears, historically, it has been diagnosed or it has been reported in this country since 1998. I mean, we have had outbreaks in 2004, we have had outbreaks. The last outbreak before this one was in 2015. And now we are seeing it again. It is endemic not only in this country, but also in Senegal and in the sub-region. In fact, almost all African countries, especially sub-Saharan African countries, are affected with foot and mouth disease.
So I would want to ask you, what is your department doing, especially with the mobilization of resources, which is very crucial in attacking such diseases? What kind of measures are you taking to tap donations from government, international organizations to control this disease and any other disease that might affect our livestock sector, especially the cattle, which is a major source of economy for many Gambians, especially the farmers?
Since the beginning of the outbreak, when we suspected it, because FMD is evident, you hardly can mistake it for so many diseases, especially the fact that it was seen in cattle. So since we saw the outbreak, or we suspected the outbreak, we started to implement control measures to minimize its spread. Because foot and mouth disease, one thing I also forgot to tell you, is the most contagious disease in mammals. That means it has the potential to spread very rapidly. I mean, within a very short period of time. One of the key things that should be done to minimize the spread of the disease is to implement movement restriction. So that we have been doing since the beginning of the event. We have also not stopped there. Of course, before you can take some other major decisions to control the disease, such as implementing a vaccination program, you have to have a good understanding of the epidemiological situation of the disease, and which is what we have been trying to do. First, we try to identify whether it was actually the foot and mouth disease virus, and also whether or what type of virus strain is actually circulating. Another interesting thing at this point I would also want to put to you is the fact that foot and mouth disease is caused by a virus that has different types, and each of the different types produces almost the same signs and symptoms. They are indistinguishable. The signs and symptoms produced by each strain are indistinguishable. You cannot say because serotype A is what is circulating, so you can see only this type of signs and symptoms. And serotype B produces a different sign and symptom, and that makes it very difficult to control. So we have basically 7 different types of serotypes, different types of the FMD virus, which are serotype A, serotype O, serotype C, serotype called SAT1, SAT2, SAT3, and ASIA1. SAT means South African type 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that is, the name that was given to the virus types when they are first discovered. So, because of this, it is very difficult to control the FMD virus. So that is why in taking decisions like vaccination to control, you need to understand exactly what is the situation epidemiologically, what virus type is circulating within a particular area. And also all these different serotypes also have variants. You can have, for example, serotype A being circulating in a particular area, and this serotype A might have different variants. So you can imagine, and if you are going in for any vaccination as a control measure, you have to know, because I think everybody knows, I mean, most people know what vaccination is. Vaccination is about protecting an animal in case a particular virus or particular causative agent of a disease comes in, you know, it doesn't produce disease, okay? So, but you have to know then the type of virus that is circulating to be able to protect against that virus. Because if you have a vaccine that protects against serotype A, for example, I'm just giving an example, I'm not saying that's the one that is here now. If you are vaccinating against serotype A, that means the vaccine has to be protective against serotype A. And that vaccine will not give any protection against a different serotype. So those are difficult. So that is why at the moment we are trying to improve on the measures such as restriction of animal movement, which is very difficult also in our production system, you know, which is extensive, especially now, and that is why I think the situation is more alarming, because of this late start of the rains, and then the feed, I mean, also the feed availability also was, I mean, late and so on. So animals got very weak at a very early stage of the rainy season, and then with the coming of this disease, the whole thing got aggravated. And also that is why also we are thinking the spread is getting abnormally unusual in this country, because as far as I know, historically the previous outbreaks had not had this rapid spread as we are seeing currently, you know. But now, because of shortage in feed in certain areas, animals, people, farmers tend to move their herds from one place to another in search of feed, you know, and hence you never know. Most of those animals might already be incubating the disease, and then when they get to these new places where susceptible animals are, of course, the disease can be transmitted there also. You know, so basically, we are trying to do this, and in doing this, we need to sensitize people, the general populace, which we are doing at the field level. We are making use of the community radios as much as possible to sensitize people on what to do at the moment. I mean, the other thing also that we are doing as a department is to try, and also is all part of the measures to minimize the impact of the disease, is try to implement what we call secondary, symptomatic treatment. As you may also want to know, is the fact that viral diseases in general don't respond to treatment. So, in other words, for the layman to know, they are not curable. They are diseases that are not curable. So, what happens in viral disease outbreaks is that they are also opportunistic organisms that worsen, that can worsen conditions, like bacteria that might be present everywhere. I mean, those also sometimes infect these diseased animals, and hence the conditions can be worsened. So what we do is we try to target some of those secondary infections and get rid of them. So we have been, where we think the situation is getting out of hand, we have been supplying our regional offices, with our regional directorates with drugs, such as antibiotics, dewormers, and so on, to target these secondary infections. But I would also want to inform the populace that, that actually is not targeting the virus. You know, it's good for people to know this. I mean, as far as the viral disease, FMD, is concerned, there is no effective treatment. There is no drug that can be administered with the intention of eliminating the virus. Okay? What we do is just to reduce or remove the secondary infections that might be occurring also. So that we are doing. at the moment. Also, we have communicated, I mean, the ministry has communicated to one of its key partners here, which is FAO, I mean, about the situation in the country, you know, with the aim of at least, you know, getting some form of pledge to support us in our efforts to cope the situation. So basically, this is what we are doing. We are not taking it lightly. It is, as you said, it warrants the consideration of an emergency situation. So it is also not the work of the Department of Veterinary Services alone, and that is why I like this initiative of the SES to come here and then at least help us in spreading the message so that we can effectively combat this serious livestock menace.
Okay, without wasting more time, I think you have a good luck in your endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.